Hey everyone, it's Michael Goosebumps fan. I finally have a review for the first of the Mummy Marathon's books from Goosebumps, written by R.L. Stine. This is from the classic series. It's one of the first books from Goosebumps, number 5, and that is Goosebumps, The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. This is the original cover art, but this is actually a large print library edition hardcover that I have. I wanted to show this in the video just in case anybody hadn't seen it before. But here's the newer art, of course. Tim Jacobus versus this. What do you prefer? I prefer this, easily. So the cover is what it is. It took me about a week to get through this book because I've had so much going on in my life. I want to apologize for that. I'm going to try to get through the books a little bit faster because there's so much going on. One of my favorite things is the Universal Mummies movies. I love these. If you've not seen the Universal Mummies movies, or the Universal Monsters films in general, like the Frankenstein movies, or Dracula, or Wolfman, or anything like that, if you're a fan of Goosebumps, and you haven't seen these old black and white movies, you're missing out. You really are. If you're a fan of the Mummy books, specifically this one, I can't speak so much to the future of the series, but at this first one, if you really enjoy it, you can tell how much Stine, and just in general with Goosebumps, how much influence and inspiration he got from watching the old Universal Monsters films, whether it be the Mummy movies or the Frankenstein films or any of that stuff when he was growing up. This movie has so much of the same feeling of things like The Mummy's Hand, The Curse of the Mummy, or The Mummy's Curse, or whatever is the Ghost of the Mummy, you know, all those old Universal Mummy films. It has a lot of the same things in common with those sequels to that original Boris Karloff movie. And I love that and appreciate that. I really do. In a very slick, universal way that also bothers me, the title of this book is so misleading. Is so misleading. If you've seen a book review from me here on my channel for a Most Wanted book called Frankenstein's Dog, you know I loved that book. I'm a big fan of Frankenstein. It's kind of almost like a sequel type thing to the original Boris Karloff Frankenstein film. It references those types of movies, and it was amazing, but the title of the book and the cover art for the book were such blatant lies. Just blatant lies, just like the Son of Slappy book from the Most Wanted series. Some of these books are straight up lies when it comes to the covers and the titles. This book is a great example of that, and it will take off a point like I usually do. If you flat out lie and mismarket something, in my opinion, you deserve to lose a little bit of points. But I have to say at the same time, with how much Goosebumps is influenced by the Universal Monsters films, they did the same thing back in the day. You had movies like Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, which is a versus movie, kind of like a Freddy vs. Jason type thing, but there's like one fight in the entire movie, and they barely have anything around to do with each other. You know, the Wolfman and Frankenstein in that movie. I love the movie to death. I absolutely do. It's one of my favorite of the Universal Monsters films, but that same concept of problem, from a fan's perspective, is done here and there as well. And it's a shame, I think, personally. The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb is such a fun read. I was trying to make sure I got the title right. That's what I was looking down at. This is such a fun book. It is such a fun freaking book. I love the Universal Mummies Monsters films, as like I said. I'm pretty much a fan of all the Mummy films from Universal, except for the new Tom Cruise one, and, you know, some of the older black and white films have their issues. But this book feels so much like the Universal original black and white movies, and I love that about it. It has so much in common with that. It feels like early days Goosebumps, which a lot of them, even to this day, feel similar, but this one has that very special, classic feel to it from the top original 5 books that came out. And it works. It's so atmospheric at times. It's eerie, it's creepy, it's spooky. To really get into the story of this book, I'll start with the main plot itself. Essentially, your main character, Gabe, is a kid who has parents who travel for a living to do different types of things. This Christmas, you're actually going to spend Christmas in Egypt. And it also turns out you happen to have an uncle named Uncle Ben, like your name is supposed to be Peter Parker in real life or something instead of Gabe. Yeah, there's an Uncle Ben in this book who happens to be kind of a, I don't know if you'd call him an Egyptologist, I think that's what they say he is in the book, but kind of the person who would go around and go into pyramids and stuff like that and check those out and look for secret tunnels and know all kinds of things. Not like so much in an Indiana Jones fashion, more so as a plain-out, direct scientist who does exploration and whatnot. I love this kind of stuff. I absolutely love it. I'm mesmerized by that culture and the kind of stuff that happens out there. It's very interesting to look into the pyramids and the different things that have been discovered ever since, you know, King Tut's tomb, which kind of started that whole push for the Universal Mummy films. This film feels so much like that. And the scale of the pyramids, once we start kind of exploring that, because the main character, Gabe's parents, leave him to spend time with his Uncle Ben and his cousin, Sari, S-A-R-I. I might be spelling that, I might be pronouncing that wrong. I think it's Sari. He has to spend time with them. He doesn't really get along with his cousin Sari, though, but he loves his Uncle Ben. He loves talking to him, but the Uncle Ben has an exploration currently going on inside of one of the pyramids, and they're trying to find more mummies, right? And he has to end up taking the kids in there, and the adventure aspect to this book is so much more grandiose than a lot of Goosebumps books. Kind of like what I said about Why I'm Afraid of Bees. There's kind of this Jumanji feel to it, almost, in some way, shape, or form. Not so much with this, but with Why I'm Afraid of Bees, that really comes into play and works so well with that story. And this is a great example of a book that benefits so much from that kind of Egyptian creepy atmosphere inside of the pyramid and how it's just pitch black everywhere. There's no windows, you know what I mean? Like, you have a flashlight, that flashlight dies, if its batteries go out, you're stuck. There's a lot of spooky stuff that's done in this book, and I love the crap out of it. There's some crazy, crazy plot twists that happen in this book. If you're a fan of the Universal Monster films, like specifically the Universal Mummy films, some of these things you'll see coming up. If you're already a big fan of that kind of old black and white movie, some of these things you'll already know they're going to happen, you know? It just kind of goes with what Stein's doing here. Is kind of an old throwback retro style storytelling. And I'm fine with that. It works great for me as a fan of the Universal Monsters films. Maybe it won't work for everybody, but it does for me. For what he's going for, I love it. I think it works so well. But let's talk about the title. Why is that misleading? Of course, this is a spoiler-free review, so I won't tell you too much. But I will directly tell you, just like in the fashion of the Universal earlier Mummy films, like the first two, one of my favorites, probably my personal favorite from the old Universal films, is The Mummy's Hand. It was the first sequel. It came out about 8 years after the original Boris Karloff Mummy film. Of course, Boris Karloff did not play the Mummy in this particular movie. Both the first film and the second film, called The Mummy's Hand, had a problem of having the mummy show up in like the last half of the movie. The Mummy's Hand, as good as it is, as fun as it is, he doesn't show up until about like 40 minutes into the film. It's kind of the same issue here. It's kind of a shame, honestly. As much as that great original Tim Jacobus artwork is, it's kind of a shame because the Mummy barely plays a part in the story at all, very much in a Universal movie fashion. So there's that aspect that I have to admit to you kind of sucks. But I really enjoyed everything else. I mean, even without the Mummy being there as often as I wanted him to be, I really dug this. And I feel like this is the kind of thing, very much like The Mummy's Hand and the future sequels of the Universal Mummy films. This is something they improved on over time. They had a ton of the Mummy, especially when Lon Chaney took over as that role of the Mummy. You know, the original guy who played the Wolfman, he played Dracula in the past. I think he played Frankenstein one time. I'm not sure. Maybe he didn't. I know Bela Lugosi did, but still. The fact that they have so much happening here with this adventure and the pyramid stuff and the Uncle Ben adventure and all that, it's a really fun read. I recommend it tremendously alone on that. It's so engaging. It's crazy. The uncle and the cousin, Sari, they love to make jokes all the time. They make these dumb, terrible puns. If you love dad jokes like myself, you will love this. I think you'll have a great time with this, especially if you're a big Universal Mummy fan, like I said. There's not a whole lot to be said about the book. The finale is kind of spooky, honestly, and I would be curious, even though none of the sequels ever really tie into each other when it comes to the Goosebumps books, I would love to see in the next book the villain have maybe a little bit of a return, possibly. The main villain in the book. There's some interesting stuff done here, and it got a lot of throwbacks, like I said, to people who are fans of Universal stuff. So that's really what I would base it on. If you're just a younger person who hasn't seen the Universal Mummy films or Universal movies in general, if you're just a fan of Goosebumps books, I don't know how much you're going to like this. It's good. I think it's really good. It's well written. It's very good at lightening up the mood sometimes with some humor, some jokes. But there's a lot of scary stuff in here. Just really insanely creepy, dark stuff. And there's a lot of darkness to this book. So keep that in mind if you're going to show this to your kid, or if you're going to recommend it to a friend who doesn't like darker books and stories and whatnot. There's a lot of spooky stuff in here, especially at points where they describe the different things that were done to create mummies back in the day. The process of mummifying a person. Pretty horrific, gory stuff, if I'm being honest with you. If you haven't heard of it before, you're going to learn about it in this book, so just be ready for that if you're prepared for that. Overall, I really enjoyed the book, but I do take points off because of the straight-up misleading lie of the cover and the picture, and how the book is being marketed as a mummy is chasing us through the pyramid type book. I'm a little ashamed by that. I'm a little sad by that. And even now, what really irritates me even more, you have this advertisement. I'm not going to show it to you, but on the back of the book there's an advertisement for the Goosebumps Horrorland book series for I think it's the 6th book in that series called Who's Your Mummy? It's a mummy book. They spoil what that story is about on the back of this book, on the reprint. Why would you do that? Why would you do that to people like myself that want to read that? I mean, it's coming up. It's not a big spoiler, but I was like, watch it be a twist that's like in the last 10 pages of the book. So be careful if you have this copy. Do not read the back of it. You might spoil a future book for yourself. But regardless, guys, I really enjoyed Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. It's not perfect. It has its faults. Again, mismarketing is my big issue with it. But overall, it's a fun, engaging, really creepy, spooky story. And I think if you love Egypt stuff, if you love Universal Mummies movies, you'll dig this. It's a really good read in that regard. Not as good as Frankenstein's Dog. Not as good as It's Alive, with a lot of their Frankenstein references there, even in that title alone, from the newer Slappy World books. It's not as good as those two, in my opinion, but it's good. It's good. It could potentially be the best mummy book, depending on what happens in the future. We have a Slappy mummy book, where they meet, or fight, or something. Don't spoil it for me. Please do not spoil that book for me. We have a Series 2000 book. It's been forever since I've read one of those, so I'm curious to get around to that. We have another classic series book that I'm going to read immediately after this one to see what happens in that book. There's so many different mummy books out there. There's like 6 or 7 of these things, so there's a lot to talk about. There's also a TV episode of the sequel book to this book, so there's a lot to say, a lot to really take into account. But overall, again, I love the original cover a lot more than this reprint cover. But when it comes to the Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, if I had to rate this book on a 5-star basis, I'd easily give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I would have given it a 5 out of 5 if they hadn't lied about the marketing on it. Again, it's not one of my favorites, even though I was willing to give it a 5 out of 5, but I'm not. It's a 4 out of 5, just to clarify, like I said. I would have been willing to give it a 5 out of 5 if they had not lied, if they had not done what they've done here, like a Universal move. The book is not one of my favorites. It's not something like a Ghost Camp type book or a You Can't Scare Me type book, which I also love and most people don't. It's not one of those types of books. It's not, Goosebumps Wanted the Haunted Mask or the original 2 Haunted Mask books. It's not even close to that caliber, but it's good. It's really good, I think. I recommend it. I think you'll enjoy it if you have a fandom feeling, whatever, for Goosebumps. If you enjoy Goosebumps, there's something nice to have here with this. I think, compared to the short story from the Tales to Give You Goosebumps books, I think Don't Wake Your Mummy is a better story than this, in total. I think it's a fantastic story. If you haven't read that, you should really hunt down that book and read it. But overall, guys, that's my thoughts on The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. Very good read. Very good read. A very good start for the Mummy series, for this marathon I'm doing here on the channel. Again, thank you for being patient with me. I'm trying my best to kind of organize everything and get my life situation with work. So much happening at work right now. I'm trying to get everything organized so I can do more reviews for you guys and get some more videos out. But thank you for watching. Thank you for being here, and God bless you guys. I hope I can do better for you. I know I've been slacking off a lot over the last few months, but there's been so much with the COVID situation and all kinds of crazy nonsense. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this book. Again, future books too, as long as you don't spoil them for me. I would love to hear your thoughts on those things too. Rankings, if you want to do that. Just don't spoil anything. Please don't tell me anything that's going to happen in those books, because I don't want to be ruined. Anyway, may the Lord Jesus... excuse me, let me try that again. I want to get my Savior's name right. May the Lord Jesus Christ bless you guys today, and goodbye.